What you're looking at is the Form Designer screen, and in this is where we go about designing all of our different forms. Now it's broken off into three general sections. First of all, we have this line of icons across the top, and this is referred to as the component toolbar. And on this toolbar, each one of these represents a different component that you can apply to this area down here, which is referred to as the form display. Now the form display area is basically the end result. This is where everything is applied and how it will look and so on. And so by applying it down here and then saving this, then you are actually saving this entire template and everything that has been applied to the form display area. Over on the right hand side, we also have this window here that will change based on whatever we select in the form display area. This is referred to as the component inspector, and within this it contains all of the different field settings that apply to the given item that I've selected over on the left hand side. And so within here, this is where you go about doing all the programming to make things different colors and sizes and shapes and whatnot. Now coming up to the toolbar, the very first icon that we have here is the component pointer. Now within this, it will be automatically depressed for you, and no matter what item you select down below, then this selection will default to it to identify that you are actually selecting that given item. Now the next one over is the pixel form style icon. You'll notice that I've got one here applied. Every form display area will contain this by default because it must have this. Now upon selecting it, you'll notice over in the inspector area the settings change now. So it shows here pixel form style, for example, and then all of the associated settings that relate to it. And this allows you to set things, for example, such as the dimensions of the form. So for example, right now it's set to 768 and 1024, or 1024 by 768. And I can change these to 800 by 600 or whatever given area I want. And that will affect the display area that is occupied by the form template itself. Also within this, I can change as far as the background in terms of the color, and I can apply images to it and so on. So this pertains to the background and the dimensions of the template. The next one over is pixel label. Now a label is basically a label that can be applied to the screen. And these labels can serve a variety of functions. They can be just like a display label, for example, or it can actually have a function, such as if I go in here and I can apply some form of programming to it. And I'll be going into this in more detail within a later section pertaining to labels. The next one over I have is pixel memo. Now a memo is basically a memo field or some form of display that gives you information on something pertaining to the transaction. And again, within this, I can select on a field, let's say, and give it some form of function. And so within here, now this memo will give me, for example, in this case, product information or whatever the case. The next one over is panel. Now a panel basically is kind of like the background of a button, for example. If you want something that has kind of, or maybe even a background of a section of the screen, for example. So if you want something maybe in a different color or maybe raised or lowered or something like that, then you can play around with the panel. So for example, if I wanted this, let's say, as the background to a button that I would apply onto the screen, then I can select on this, and then for example I can change, let's say, the beveled edge up to from a 1 to a 9, and you'll see now it kind of looks like a button. Or I can expand it to kind of occupy an area where I can contain a whole bunch of buttons or whatever the case. So that's what a panel is. The next one over is image. Now by selecting on image, I can actually apply a graphic image, a static image, a picture to the screen. And so with this, I can go over to the right and I can select on the field picture, for example. And in here, I can load up an image, let's say of a Danish. And I can select on that. And here I have a picture of a Danish. And of course, within all the settings, I can resize it and stretch it and shrink it and make it proportional and so on like that. But this gives you an idea of what you can do in terms of applying an image to the template. Next one over is shape. Now selecting on shape, I can then select my area and then choose what type of shape I want. So for example, I may want an ellipse or a circle or whatever the case. So you can apply general shapes, and within those as well, then you can change around its appearance a little bit as well. Next thing we have is bevel. Now a bevel is basically kind of like an indentation, or it can be raised as well within the screen. It's similar to a panel, except this really doesn't affect the display in terms of creating like an image. It's more a matter of just choosing an area that you want to have either raised or lowered. And so this will allow you to do that. And then within it, you can apply some settings on that. The next one over is timer. And you'll notice here that there is a timer automatically applied to the template as well. Now, timers are not really used within a point of sale system. They're more used within a kiosk application. Now, what the timer does is that it will cycle through, and after a determined length of time that you program into the inspector, then it will perform a given function that you decide to apply to it. So you'll see within here, for example, I can give it like an action or execute a coupon or whatever the case. And within any one of these, then I can go into another field called function name. And within here, for example, I want to kick into the out of service check, or I want to show the screensaver or cancel an order or something like that. And so with that being said, and you can set the time duration for this. And so if that time has come and gone, and nothing has happened on the screen, then this timer will kick in and execute whatever that is. And it could also navigate to another screen as well. The next one over is button list. Now, a button list is literally a list of buttons. And within here, I can, for example, program this to show a listing of, let's say, payments or sale types or so on like that. And we'll talk more about this in detail later. There's also item list. The item list is basically the window that shows up on the order screen and on the finished screen that contains the items that you've ordered. So there's only pretty well one setting for this, which is to be an item list. But within this, this is where you go about determining as far as the size and dimension of it and so on. But also, if you select on it, referring back to the kiosk application as well, you can actually have it navigate to some other screen as well. A roll panel. A roll panel is something that will expand and contract based on you selecting it. And so within here, I can apply, for example, all kinds of different functions and buttons and so on in this. And I can have this, here I'm just going to set that as the roll down size, and I'll roll it up, set the roll up size, and then I'll roll it. And so what a roll panel will do is it will automatically expand, and within that, it will bring into view a whole bunch of other buttons that were otherwise hidden within some little tiny button. The Flash Player. You can now apply flash images to your screens as well. And within this will now turn into a little viewing screen that will show a Shockwave Flash image. And this works in conjunction with this icon here, which is the Flash List. And you populate the Flash List with a list of all the different Flash items that you have within your POS. And then within here, then you can select on which one that you want to apply within here. The image list relates to images. And so within here, I can populate a list of all the different images, such as like buttons and so on like that. And then when I'm creating all these different things, I can pull those images from that list. This is the wave list, and within here I can populate this with wave files. Again, referring back to kiosk applications, for example, this is where you can go about applying in wave files to say, please place your order, please select method of payment, or something of that nature. And these wave files can then be applied directly into the screens themselves, or on buttons, or within windows, or whatever the case, so that when you select on it, then the system will actually speak to you with that wave file. I also have these buttons here, which are all grid buttons. So referring back to the way the order screens used to be set up, I have, for example, the order page grid. So I select on this, there's a list of my order pages. I select on this, there's my product grid. There's also the modifier grid with a list of modifier buttons, and also the question grid. Now, the question grid does not work within the conventional ordering screen. This is designed specifically for the force question forms under questions, force questions. And so within there, when you now bring up a force question, you can actually have a form for it that will contain this grid of all your various answer settings on it. There's also this selection here for function buttons. So selecting on this, I can program a button. let's just get that out of the way. I can program a function button now, and selecting on this, I can program it to do virtually anything in the point of sale system, as far as order screens, finish screens, whatever the case. And within this, I can then select on any function as well. And these functions could be anything, including, for example, individual coupons. They can be any of these buttons as well, and they can be modifier pages, products, order pages, whatever the case. You can program virtually anything into a function button. I also have this one, which is web browser. Now, selecting on this is with the assumption that your system is actually tied into the internet as well. Within this, I can now occupy this and tie it into something on the internet. So for example, here I have a field called URL. I can put in www.google.ca. And within that now, I have this little window that actually shows up with Google Canada, for example. So you can actually put interact this directly with the web, and it's really nifty for things such as putting in like what the weather is, or maybe news bulletins or something like this. It's really good for customer displays, not so much for the point of sale system itself. And the last one here I have is Pixel Image, and the Pixel Image is actually kind of a combination of both the images and the image list, and we're kind of consolidating that into one function so you can do the whole thing within the one setting. So this kind of gives you a brief overview in terms of the different components that reside within the toolbar. And within the subsequent videos that are going to come out, you're going to see how many of these function, how to put them together. Most of them are pretty simple and straightforward to work with, but anything that could be just a little bit tricky, we will be covering that within this series of videos.